thank Bhai Supreet Singh for coming all the way over here to lecture us, of course, we really appreciate that. Bhai Supreet Singh is passionate about South Asian studies with an emphasis on the Sikh tradition. Bhai Supreet Singh is currently working full-time as an electrical engineer and part-time speaker for Basis Sikhi. Basis Sikhi is a project for Everything's 13, an educational charity which campaigns using YouTube and printed material and social media to educate all on the Sikh faith. Bhai Supreet Singh has studied under traditional and scholarly lineages via mentor and protege from India. Today, Bhai Supreet Singh will be discussing the history of Sikh Sampardais, what a Sampardai is, and which Sampardais originate from the time of the Gurus and are still around today. At the end of the talk, we will be having a Q&A. It's going to be an anonymous Q&A. That's what the note cards are for. So whatever questions you guys have during the talk, they can be about the talk, or they can be just generally about any questions you may have regarding Sikhi, and we will answer those at the end of the talk. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you everyone for coming out today. It's really nice being back here. We were back here in February, March for the interfaith talk, and I really enjoyed it personally. So we'll love to come back. Today's talk will be on Sikh Sampardai. What is a Sampardai? We'll go through that. We'll go through the root meaning of it. Before we start, I would just like to do a quick ardas to Guru Sahib before we start together, and that way then we'll start the presentation. So if everyone can just join me, you close your eyes, you can leave them open if you want. Namaskar Shri Khadga ko Karo Suhit Chitlai Purn Karo Granth Iha Tum Mohe Karo Sahai Kripa Sindh Tumari Kripa Jo Kach Mo Par Hoye Racho Chandika Ki Katha Bani Shubh Sab Hoye Kahan Buddh Prabh Tuchh Hamari Barn Sakya Mehma Jo Tihari हम ना सकत कर सिफत तुम्हारी आप ले हो तुम कथा सुधारी वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. Before we start, when I was first approached with this topic by Harveer Singh, I was thinking originally that we'll just cover up basics of every sampradaya. I was thinking about 4 main ones, and I was thinking, okay, you know what, we'll just cover these 4 and we'll go on with it. And I started researching, started studying, and when I opened up one sampradaya, it was like a can of worms. It just opened up to another, it led to another thing, led to another thing, and I realized there's no way you can cover in detail about all the sampradayas in one talk. So what we're going to do is going to leave this presentation to one sampradaya. Okay, we're going to talk about what sampradaya is, but we're talking about just one community for this presentation. Okay. So what is a sampradaya? This is a typical definition you'll find in the Sanskrit Granth, because it is a Sanskrit word. So the translation is Sammik Pradaya iti Sampradaya. Sammik means Changitara, which means very well. Pradaya means dena. Iti means equals. And Sampradaya means Sampradaya. What that means is Sampradaya is passing down from one generation to another generation certain type of information, and that gets passed down through time. So I call this type, I named the talk lineages of time. Yeah. So it's a lineage, But to create a sampradaya, it takes time to create the sampradaya. So the sampradaya we're talking about today is how Gyaniya di sampradaya. Okay? You might heard someone called Gyani, right? Gyani Harjeet Singh, Gyani, anyone, right? There's a tradition to the Gyanis that we're going to be exploring today. We're going to be looking at the roots, the foundation, going into how the tradition was then finalized and how we see that tradition being used today. Okay? So to begin this talk, we first need to look at Anandpur Sahib. This is back in 1680s. And what we see in history is that Guru Gobind Singh Ji writes out letters calling for the scholars of all of India and nearby countries to come to Anandpur Sahib, right? Effectively, Guru Sahib is creating a darbar. They're creating a school institution where all the Vidwans from all over are coming in, not necessarily from one type of faith. What I want to stress throughout this topic is that see the way you see Sikhi and question yourself while we go through the history. So Guru Sahib sends out these letters. We have historical reference in Bhai Supreet Singh's Rahatname which talk about this. When the Vidwans, the scholars come from different traditions, different backgrounds, they come to Anandpur Sahib. Guru Sahib has them commissioned and they do different type of works. Okay, what type of work do? They translate different scriptures, different texts from different backgrounds. None of them have much to do with the word Sikh. That's something interesting. A lot of the texts come from different backgrounds, from Sufi traditions, from Sanskrit traditions, from different languages, Arabi, Farsi, Pashto, Sanskrit. And Guru Sahib has them all translated into one script, which is the Gurmukhi Lipi. You could see that Lipi on the left side. Lipi means style of writing. So this is the Gurmukhi Lipi. So Guru Sahib has all those texts translated into that one Lipi, and the language they use is called Braj, which is, you can say, Western Hindi. It's a very simple language to learn. A lot of scholars back then, poets, would use that language. Okay, so here I have some examples from different texts that were written. Up there, we see a section of the Mahabharata that was translated in 1696. So this is Anandpur Sahib. And within that translation, the Kavi meaning the poet whose name is Mangal here, they write down this quote here, which I put here, to reference where they are, what they're doing. They're saying, Anand ko Data Guru Sahib Gobind Rai, that the giver of bliss, the Guru Gobind Rai. Chahe so Anand, to Anandpur aiye. If you wish to receive this bliss, come to Anandpur Sahib. And again, these kavis are not necessarily from the Sikh tradition. They could be from backgrounds of different faiths. Then on the bottom you have another kavi who is translating a different section of the Mahabharata. He says, Dron Parpat Pakha Kiyo Guru Gobind Sujan Kahyo Kovav Sukav Kovresh Ko Diye Kororundan. He says that I translated this chapter in the Sabha, in the court of the Guru, and I've been blessed with millions. As in, Guru Sahib paid these guys a lot of money. This is just a picture of Anandpur Sahib from the 1865, provided by the Digital Library of Punjab. So some more historical mentions. This is by Kavi Sanapat. This is a very famous Kavi, very famous historian as well. He translated a few different texts, but one in particular we have today is Chanakya Rajniti. And within the Gyaniya tradition, this text is taught as well. It's a text about socio-political methods. Chanakya was someone who was the Rajguru of Chandramaurya Gupta in the 2nd century of India. And his text was available only in Sanskrit. Guru Sahib had it translated. And at the end of his text, he writes this, Guru Gobind ki sabha mein hai lekhak param sujan. I'm sitting in the sabha, the darbar of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and there's many scholars here. Chanaka pakha kiyo kav sanapat naam. My name is Sanapat. I have done the pakha. Pakha means translation of this text called Chanaka Rajniti. Some more historical references here. So from the Kavi Darbar, so that's the name that was given to that time period, Kavi Darbar. You might have heard this word before, thrown at it. What I wanted to do with this presentation was to kind of give you eyesight into the historical text. Not just tell you and you take it by face value, but so you can actually see the history that we have still maintained till today. It's just not much research is done on it. Not many people are looking into it, but it's there. Okay? Have you ever heard of the Masnavi? Masnavi is written by who? Anyone know? So Sufi guy, really important Sufi guy. I'll tell you in a minute. So the Masnavi is hailed as the Persian Quran. Like it's that important to the Islamic traditions. The Masnavi is translated in the Guru's Darbar. Okay, here's a physical photograph of the Masnavi translation. And what's interesting is that every translation will start with the Mangal. Yeah, every translation is labeled, and that Mangal signifies where this translation is taking place. Yeah? It's almost as if, what comes to my mind is that, have you ever heard of this Norwegian island that holds a bunch of seeds? It's all like a seed vault, a seed bank. Have you ever heard of that? So there's like this seed bank on like an offshore Norwegian island. And the idea behind that is that if the whole world was to be destroyed, they have all the seeds there in that vault. So they can restart creation one more time. They can restart vegetation one more time. So plants and food and all these things can be available to the human population, whatever that population is. I feel like Guru Sahib is creating a vault of knowledge, right? Different, and it's not limited to just one sphere. Yeah? When we say Sikhi is universal, it's really shown here that the Sikh faith is very universal. There's no door that's closed to anyone. Yeah? Everyone's allowed in, and from their knowledge, you can extract the spiritual wisdom behind it. Okay. This is just another picture of another manuscript that's translated in Guru Sahib's Darbar. And this one is going to be really important. We're going to come back to this in just a second. But this one is associated to Bhai Mani Singh. Okay? So there were various different subjects that were worked on in Guru Sahib's Darbar, ranging from medicine to spirituality to dictionaries to mythology. Some things like we mentioned already, the Mahabharata. Some things like Chanaka Rajniti we mentioned as well. And the Amar Kosh was a really big one. The Upanishads, the Masnavi, which is by Rumi. Okay, so this was the roots of the Gyaniya Sampardai. Okay, all this kind of finalizes to one person, one or two people we see in history. The person we're going to focus on today is Bhai Mani Singh. Okay, Bhai Mani Singh is a very key character in the Sikh history, who gave their Shahidi during a time period which kind of initiated much more for the Sikh to go through in the 18th century. So Bhai Mani Singh Ji is hailed as a divan of that court. So that Kavi Darbar, that court of poets, out of those court of poets, we see the number about 52 come up within our history. Pyara Singh Padam actually has a book called the Darbari Ratan. In that book, you can actually see all the names of the different poets come up in that book, and a little bit of their history as well comes in there as well. Bhai Mani Singh Ji is hailed as a divan. The divan means the head of that court. Yeah? So Bhai Mani Singh Ji starts to, when Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj becomes Jyoti Jyot, Bhai Mani Singh Ji is that facilitator that carries out much Guru-like things. Meaning what the Guru would do, Bhai Mani Singh Ji is doing that for the Sangat. They're getting the Sangat together, they're creating programs, they're releasing Hukaname with the advice of the two Matama, Mata Sayadeva and Mata Sundarji, and they release Hukaname which we still have today. Professor Ganda Singh has actually they have a text called Hukaname. You can look and see those Hukaname still today. So the Gyaniya Sampradaya is not formalized at this point. Bhai Mani Singh Ji is given the duty of taking the teachings given by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which are released in the form of Katha, and that teachings are history related, Gurbani related, reading and writing Gurbani, the theology of Sikhi, all these things are passed down to Bhai Mani Singh. What happens is that when this system of Gyanis is actually formalized, it will take a place in the heart of all of our institutions, the Darbar Sahib. The Darbar Sahib used to have a complex like this. If you look at the picture on the left side, you see there's numbers all around Darbar Sahib. What those numbers are indicating are different buildings that actually were in the Prakarma of Darbar Sahib, which are not there today. Those buildings were all schools, different schools, schools teaching medicine, schools teaching surgery, Sangeet, music, and the Gyaniya Bunga, which was believed to be somewhere around here. Yeah. Some scholars believe it's this one right here, number 47. Some people believe that this was the Gyaniya Bunga. This was the institution where people came and learned all there was about history, Gurbani Vidya, theology, and the philosophy of Gurmat. And again, these aren't there anymore. When the SGPC, they wanted to clear up the Prakarma. The Prakarma means just the complex around the Darbar Sahib, which is the place in the middle. When they went to clean it up, then these buildings were first to go. Okay. Here's a picture from the 1836 showing these buildings. You can see Darbar Sahib is very crowded almost. It's crowded, there's a lot going on here. And you can see right in the middle there's someone sitting there with the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And all around, you can see things going on. A lot of vegetation as well. If you look in the top left corner there, which we'll zoom into, you can see there's two people sitting there. And this is the tradition of the Gyani Sampradaya. How it works is that there's two people. There's a teacher and there's a student. Yeah, the teacher is called the Ustad, which is a Farsi word, a Persian word. And the student is called Vidyarthi. And they interact in this way where the Ustad passes down whatever class he's teaching, and the Vidyarthi listens and learns. So it looks like that's what the artist is depicting over there in that corner. Okay, so we were talking about Bhai Mani Singh. Bhai Mani Singh Ji then passes down their knowledge that they learned from the Guru to someone named Bhai Guru Bakhsh Singh. Okay, we have a historical reference for this given by Sant Nihal Singh. Mani Singh Kirpa Kar Such Sevak Nij Jaan Sri Guru Bakhsh Mrgesh Ko Arth Padhaye Man. And this language that you hear right now is Braj. This is the language of Braj. And this is what, if you pick up any book from the 19th century, the 18th century, any Sikh historical book, any text, it will be written in this language. Yeah. How did that language change to Punjabi and become more socialized? We'll talk about that as well. But I want you to pay attention to this, that Bhai Mani Singh Ji gives her teachings to someone named Bhai Guru Bakhsh Singh. They've recognized Bhai Guru Bakhsh Singh to have those qualities. And if you look at the image that Bhai Guru Bakhsh Singh is carrying, the type of outfit they're wearing, this represents a certain tradition which we know as the Nihang Singhs. So it's very interesting. I want you to just keep that in mind as we talk about the formalization of the Gyani Sampradaya. So, eventually, Guru Bakhsh Singh passes on this knowledge to someone named Bhai Supreet Singh. Bhai Supreet Singh this is where the word Gyani is first introduced. So again, from Sant Nihal Singh, Tinko Surat Singh Ji Pade. I have included the translation. So the translation you're seeing on the screen, they don't actually exist. I just translated them here for you guys because a lot of these texts are not even published. So a lot of these texts have not been published. This was provided by the Bhai Gurdas Ji's society, by Jeevan Pal Singh, who's working. So there's started. Ruchir Katha Vistar Granth Sahib ki karehi. He did a lot of Katha in Vistar. Vistar means in great detail, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Sikh Sangat Nit Sahas Sarvan Kar Man Mud Parehi. In the hundreds, Sikh Sangat will come to listen to this person. Pun Sampardai Tin Ko Chaleo. From him, this Sampardai has been started. Jagmay Gyani Naam Hua. And the name was coined Gyani. Yeah. So you can see the root was the Anandpur Sahib Darbar, coming down to Bhai Mani Singh, coming down to someone named Bhai Guru Baksh Singh, and then when it reaches Bhai Supreet Singh, whose birth is estimated around 1719, and they pass away right before Maharaja Ranjit Singh takes over the Sikh Raj, which we call in 1799. We can see that the word Gyani has now been coined. Sabapu Papoja Guru Roop Kar Mukat Roop Abhiram Hua. And all the people, the leaders at that time, the kings of that time, used to respect him with the honor as if he was the Guru. He was such an important figure in the history of Sikhi. Okay, now this is what starts to get condensed down. From Bhai Supreet Singh, we reach an area where combines them as much as he can in 1799, and that's when the establishment of Sikh Raj happens in Punjab. And Punjab, as we know it today, is just one part of Punjab. The part that we don't know about is Lenda Punjab, which is the western Punjab, which falls in Pakistan today. Yeah. So Lenda Punjab and Charda Punjab in total has 7 rivers. Yeah. We only know about Punjab, which means 5 rivers, and technically only 3 rivers are in the eastern side and 2 rivers are actually in Pakistan, which we don't know about. Back then, it expanded to 7 rivers all the way to the Sindh. So Punjab's geographical territory was really vast. So someone named Bhai Sant Singh is born during the Missile era, and he gets appointed as the head Granthi of Darbar Sahib, right? When Maharaja Ranjit Singh takes power. Maharaja Ranjit Singh takes power in 1799, right? 1801, 1803, he takes over Amritsar. And he appoints Sant Singh as the Darbar Sahib Granthi. Yeah. So Sant Singh is now Darbar Sahib Granthi, and he's mentioned in history so much as such an amazing scholar. And not just amazing scholar, but amazing Bhagat as well. So here we have some references by one of his students. This is also Braj as well. The reason for me to include the historical references here is A, like I told you, so you can see the history for yourself. B, so you can have some exposure to the language that our texts are written in primarily. Sant Singh's katha or discourse is so strong that it was able to bring someone who was pule hue. Pule hue means that someone's lost, right? When someone's lost, someone doesn't have any place to go. Where did they go to? They used to go to listen to katha. So katha was a very important part of our institutions that is not as important as we see it nowadays. Katha Sant Singh Ju ki mohe jiye jatan ko. They said that his katha gives me hope. Mantar hai ke tantra hai ke jantar hai ke jari hai. Is his katha some type of magic spell, or is it a jari booty? Is it medicine? I can't tell, his student is saying. So from this we also realize that in Darbar Sahib, Sant Singh used to do katha. So there used to be katha done in Darbar Sahib. And the head Granthi used to do that katha. On this picture here on the left side, you can see him sitting. It's a portrait of him sitting in the court of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. We'll see the full image as we go forward. And this is a text by quote by Ganesha Singh, which I put the translation up here. Among the Khatris of this place, Bhai Sant Singh was famous for the understanding of the Granth, referring to Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So the Guru Granth Sahib Ji was understood by the Granthi. Yeah, and if anyone had a question, for example, you see like Mukhaf or like, what's his name, Dr. Ernest Trump, when he comes to, and if you haven't heard these names before, it's okay. This is different people that were appointed by the British government to research what Sikhi is. Yeah. So Dr. Ernest Trump, when he wanted to know what Sikhi was, he went to the Granthis. He's like, tell me what your faith is about, And then they did their own research. So, if you can see a picture here, that's Baba Atal Rai's Gurdwara in the back. And right in front of it, there's a small building there. That was a samad of Sant Singh Gyani. Samad means a place of remembrance to remember someone that passed away. So, and I have a digitally enhanced picture here. So right here, this building, you can see there was a samad that was dedicated in the remembrance and the memory of Sant Singh Gyani. So showing how big and important figure he was in our history. This was also destroyed in the late 1900s. This is one of the doors that you will see when you enter Darbar Sahib. Darbar Sahib has 4 doors around the main Darbar, right? This is one of the doors. If you look into one of the doors, what it says there will be inscriptions on the doors, right? I want you to focus on this side right here. Okay. This, I typed it up for you guys. Ease of convenience. And this is what it says on top of that door. Seva Sri Guru Ram Das Ji ki Swaran ki Arasang Supad ki. I'll translate that. The Seva of Guru Ram Das Ji, meaning the Darbar Sahib, of the gold, Swaran means gold, and the marble, which we see on Darbar Sahib today. Badpagi Jan ke Sri Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Ranjit Singh Maharaja, the king of that time, recognized himself to be very blessed to do the seva. So karai marfat Sri Bhai Sant Singh Gyani Ji ki. Marfat means through the advice, through the guidance, through the supervision of Sant Singh Gyani. Yeah. So Sant Singh was given 500,000 rupees and told, you're going to supervise this project. Yeah. In 1803, when Maharaja Ranjit Singh takes over Amritsar, he gives this project to Sant Singh Gyani and he says that I'm going to give you this money. You figure out what to do with this money. You figure out how this project is going to be done. Sant Singh Gyani then hires different type of workers to put the gold and the marble onto Harmandir Sahib that we see today. Besides this, Sant Singh has also written 2 commentaries. One is on the Tulsi Ramayan, and this quote is from another text that has not been published, Har Bhagat Prem Prakash. So it's written by someone who is contemporary to Sant Singh Gyani. Contemporary means that it was living in the same time as Sant Singh. Their name is Bhai Sham Singh, Baba Sham Singh Ji. And they write in their text that Sant Singh writes a commentary on Tulsi Ramayan. Now, why is Sant Singh so important? We'll come to that one second. But this was the picture that I was trying to show you before. Sant Singh is sitting on the right side. Akali Baba Phula Singh, Hari Singh Nalwa, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and Sher Singh in that order. These are very prominent names that you might have heard before. Yeah. So this is a portrait of that time period, contemporary portrait of that time period, showing Sant Singh being royal in the sense that he was a royal Gyani. He was appointed by the government, and he not only took care of spiritual items, he also took care of political items as well. Okay, so why was Sant Singh so important? Sant Singh is so important because of his student. His student's name is Kavi Santokh Singh. Okay, how many of you heard this name before? Santokh Singh. Yeah. Okay, he seemed to be a very controversial figure nowadays. Yeah, unfortunately, but it wasn't always the case, right? The reason of us going through that whole lineage that you heard of Mani Singh to Gurbaksh Singh to Surat Singh to Sant Singh is to eventually trickle down to this point. Now the presentation will officially start. Yeah, that was just an introduction to who Kavi Santokh, the background to this person here. Okay, this is one of my favorite authors, and his texts are one of my favorite texts as well to do research on and to study. So Kavi Santokh Singh was a student of Sant Singh Gyani. He learned from Sant Singh Ji for about 10 years. Yeah. And then he went off, and we're going to look at his life in just a moment. But he's hailed as the crowned poet. Yeah. So if you hear in discourse nowadays by the Gyanis, they'll call him Chudamani. Kavi Santokh Singh Chudamani. Chudamani means, this is a translation from the Mahan Kosh. This is the excerpt from the Mahan Kosh, which is a dictionary that a lot of scholars would use, which is written by Khan Singh Nampa. And in there it says Mukat. Mukat means a taj. Taj means a crown. And Sir par pehnanda ratan. Ratan means jewel. A jewel that you wear on your head. Kavi Santokh Singh Ji is hailed as a jewel of poetry of that time. And even to today, scholars will hail to his works. Yeah? So we will see what he achieved and what we have of his till today. Is everyone following along so far? Yeah? Let me know if there's anything that you're not understanding, going too fast, because this talk is for you. Yeah? This research was fun for me, so I'm done with it. Now I want to give it to you. So whatever is too much for you to handle, whatever needs a little bit of background information, just let me know, because I don't know what your background is. I don't know where you guys coming from in your philosophy of Sikhi, how much you know about Sikh history. So I might throw names at you, assuming you might know, but you might not know that. So just raise your hand whenever I say a name that's alien to you, and I'm happy to go through it. Okay, so this is a model illustration of Sant Singh Gyani, the person we were just talking about earlier, the teacher of Santokh Singh, right? Kavi Santokh Singh Ji, in his own words, in a text called the Garam Ganjani, he does a dandot, a bandana to his teacher. He does satkar to his teacher, reverence to his teacher by saying this: Siri mat mur gur bhajan. My teacher, my guru is always in devotion. Daya tam baram. He is the house of compassion and love. Tinke pagna pranam hua. I bow down to his feet. Sant Singh Shubhanam. His name is Sant Singh. Yeah. So Kavi Santokh Singh Ji, in their own text, is referring back to their teacher. So where is Kavi Ji born? Kavi Ji takes birth in an area called Pind Sarai Nuruddin, which was then turned into Killa Santokh Singh. Now I'm going to talk about a very prominent scholar whose name is Bhai Veer Singh. How many people has heard of Bhai Veer Singh before? Bhai Veer Singh, very few. Okay, so when it comes to like Sikh history, we pick up a book on the shelf. Oftentimes, we won't be picking up Kavi Santokh Singh's book because the language is alien to us now. Remember the language talk about Braj? It's not something that a common person, Punjabi person will understand anymore. The books we pick up for Sikh history today will be maybe by Veer Singh, Professor Saib Singh, Professor Ganda Singh. These scholars write in Punjabi, and there is more of an easier language for us to read. And then that book will probably translate to English for us to like share with like kids at the Gurdwara or something. But where are they getting their knowledge from? Bhai Veer Singh is a devotee of Kavi Santokh Singh, you can say. He loves Kavi Santokh Singh. From his letters and his writings, you can pick that up. The books that we see today are just translations of Kavi Santokh Singh's work. And the scholars themselves say that. They say in their own writings, I'm just translating what Kavi Santokh Singh did. Yeah. Because the history and the research that Kavi Santokh Singh had done, no one had done before that. Okay? And also was to revive Santokh Singh Ji's, not revive, sorry, to preserve his memory. Okay, so this committee goes into the place where the Janamasthan, where Santokh Singh is born, and they create a Yadgari, or in the works of it, during the time when Bhai Veer Singh writes his letter, is dated as 1953, September 15. So he writes, Bhai Veer Singh writes the Mangal on top, and then he says, Pyare Jio, oh my loved ones. Aap da pattar te ishtihar puje han, I received your letter, and ishtihar means like poster. बड़ी खुशी होई कि आपने आप दे उद्यम नाल श्रोमणी कवि भाई संतोख सिंह जी दी यादगार कायम होण दा प्रारंभिक दिन नियत हो गया है. I'm very happy that you have taken this journey of establishing the birthplace or the yadgar, the place of remembrance of Santokh Singh. I'm very happy that you're doing this because he is a Shiromani Kavi. He is the highest poet we have. ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦਿਨ ਭਾਰੀ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੈ. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਫਲਤਾ ਬਖਸ਼ੇ ਆਪ ਦਾ ਉਦਮ ਸਿਰੇ ਚੜੇ. He's giving his blessings that your udam may reach where it needs to be. And then he goes on to say that Kavi Santokh Singh ji jo panth de sir si shukr hai. I'm very happy, I'm very thankful that the head of our panth, you're making a place of memory for him because oh rin adda hon laga hai. Rin means karja. Who understands karja? Karja means like you take a loan out, you go in debt, right? So Veer Singh is saying that the panth is in debt to Santokh Singh. Is that why? Because we're learning about our gurus through the works he has done. Yeah. So he said that now half of that rin, half of that karja, half of that loan that the community has taken out has been paid back by making this Gurdwara. Bhai Veer Singh also gives a check of 125 rupees to help with the financial needs to build that place. Okay, so Kavi Santokh Singh is born in that area which we looked at, Pind Nuruddin, and there's some information that Kavi Santokh Singh ji goes to an area which is Buriye, and he becomes a court poet over there, so he gets hired by the Buriye area. Eventually he moves on to the state of Patiala, who the Maharaja is Karam Singh of that time, who hires him as well. So again, remember, he's born during Sikh rule and dies in Sikh rule. So a lot of the kings of that time are Sikhs, right? So Maharaja Karam Singh appoints Kavi Santokh Singh ji and gives him a certain amount of salary and a place to stay as well, and he's treated as a royal poet. Okay, now we move on to the most important part, Maharaja Uday Singh. So Uday Singh was the king of an area called Cantal. So this is from the state of Cantal of India. Their own website pays homage to Kavi Santokh Singh, which I found crazy. So this is from their website, just copy and pasted it here. The Sikh rulers known as Bhai ruled over Cantal from 1763 to 1843, and they just named down the different emperor over there, the names of the emperors, and they talk about Bhai Uday Singh, who took over the throne and ruled until 1843, which is the year Uday Singh dies, and then at the same time Kavi Santokh Singh passes away as well, 1843. So in Farsi are still safe in museum in Patiala. The splendor of Cantal was topped during that reign. Famous poet Bhai Santokh Singh was the poet in his court. His famous work include, and these are different texts that we're going to talk about now. But it's amazing that the Indian website of Cantal still has, and this is the first page, like you didn't really have to go that far to find it. They still pay homage to Kavi Santokh Singh and recognizing him to be a very important part of Cantal. So Maharaja Uday Singh hires Santokh Singh as a poet laureate in 1825. So he's a government funded poet. Yeah, so it's very big. And he creates a few different texts during that time, which we'll analyze a few of them, but we'll just talk about the rest of them. One of them is Garam Ganjani, which we'll look at in this slide today, in the text, in the presentation today. Another one is Balmiki Ramayan. So the Ramayan is popular by two people, Tulsi and Balmiki. Yeah, these are two authors of the Ramayana that are very popular today. Remember, Tulsi Ramayana was actually done by his teacher, Kavi Santokh Singh's teacher, Sant Singh Gyani. He had translated Tulsi Ramayana. And Santokh Singh himself has translated Valmiki Ramayana. Yeah. And this was treated as, it's like how we learn, Shakespeare and all these different type of poets today in our courses and stuff. The Ramayana and Mahabharata and all these things are considered to be the highest form of literature that India had. So if you worked on that literature, you're known as a high scholar. That's what it means, yeah? So scholars would do it for fun. They'll translate to show the vidvita, or how much vidya that the Sikhs possess. Yeah. So it's like, you're living in America, and we see a Sikh doctor and we're like, wow, look, he's a Sikh doctor, right? Or you see a Sikh guy in the army, you see a Sikh guy in anywhere, you get proud. Like, oh, these are our people on the stage. These are, in the same way, India largely looks at us as almost like aliens. They don't recognize us as their own people, right? So when you create something that puts you on the stage, when you create something that they know their mind, they know the Mahabharata. When you do something, you translate their work, they're like, whoa, you guys are scholars, or you guys are smart as well. Well, you guys can do this, then what can you not do, right? So Kavi Santokh Singh had translated Valmiki Ramayana. He had translated parts of the Upanishads and the Vedanta Shastra, which was called the Atam Puran, which is lost. We don't have that today. We do have these two texts. Garbhanjani has been published. Valmiki Ramayana is being published as we speak. The Guru Pratap Suraj Granth, which is published by Veer Singh himself. So, how are we doing with the names so far? I know I throw a lot of names at you. Yeah, you guys remember some names? Yes. To his death, yes. So he took over. Oh no, sorry, it's the date of rule. So he took over in 1818 to 1843. Yeah, it's the date he ruled over. Yeah, Cantal. But it's not his birth and that date. It is 1843 is when he dies though. That's why he gave up his rule. But 1818 when he started rule. This portrait, by the way, is from this book. I'm not going to pronounce because I don't know Farsi like that. But it's a book that contains a lot of portraits of the Maharajas of Punjab at that time. And this is from the Tour collection. Okay, so we're going to look into a few works that Santokh Singh has done. And remember, we're reaching the point where we're just looking at the different accomplishments of the Gyaniya Sampardai. Okay, so there's two type of writing styles. One is prose, one is poetry. Poetry is written as Kavrachana, and prose is Vartik Rachana. That's what it's called. And oftentimes when you write in poetry, especially 19th century texts, right, 18th century texts, it was in Braj Bhasha, which we just very well seen up to now. So Kavi Santokh Singh Ji writes a book called the Naam Kosh, which is Sanskrit encyclopedia. He writes his Guru Nanak Prakash, which is what he really gets famous for. He writes the Valmiki Ramayana, which also gives him a lot of respect in the court of Cantal, because before he comes to the court of Cantal, he's already written the Nanak Prakash. He's written the M. Patiala with Karam Singh. When he comes to Cantal, he writes the Valmiki Ramayana. He gets a lot of praise from Uday Singh. And we'll see a letter that Uday Singh actually writes to Santokh Singh describing how happy he is with his work. And then from there, he gets funding and says he's told to write the Suraj Prakash, or he writes the Suraj Prakash. And some prose texts are the Garam Ganjani and the Atam Puran, the Tika, which we don't have today, is lost. The Garam Ganjani, Suraj Prakash, Nanak Prakash, we'll be talking about that in this slide, in this talk. So this is a letter written by the Maharaja Uday Singh. Farsi was the royal language, so Persian was the royal language of that time. And in this letter, on the top right corner, it says Akaji Sahai, and this is a letter by Uday Singh, Raja Uday Singh, to Kavi Santokh Singh Ji and the nearby districts, to let them know that Kavi Santokh Singh Ji is going to be paid, not only this generation, but his generations to follow should be paid from the different income from different villages. This is a translation of that letter, which we won't need to go through because I just gave you the description of the letter. But basically, it just says that Kavi Santokh Singh Ji, I'm very happy with Kavi Santokh Singh's work, the Valmiki Ramayana, and I want all the nearby districts to take out some tax money and put it to a funding for Santokh Singh Ji, not just for his generation, but his generations to come. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few of his texts. This is the Garb Ganjani. Garb means ego, hankar, right? And this text was written as a response. Yeah? It's written in response to someone named Udasi Anandakan. So Anandakan, who was from the Udasi Sampardai, he writes a commentary on the Japji Sahib. And the commentary of Japji Sahib did not, actually it quite upsetted a lot of people, a lot of Sikhs at that time. His commentary, don't know why he wrote it in that way, but his commentary upsetted a lot of people. And his major claim was that there's no intelligence to the Japji Sahib. So Japji Sahib is a Bani that we read every single day. And this Bani, we think of it as just a religious chore to read. Scholars look at this Bani and try to translate it, try to look at different ideas that the scripture is presenting to them. Yeah. So this person said that there's nothing intellectual about the Japji Sahib. Yeah. And this is important for us to know, because today, if we're challenged in the academia field, yeah, of what's special about your scriptures, yeah, we might not know what's in our scriptures because we're not part of that, tradition of learning and stuff. But we can see that people of the past had the same dialect with different scholars as well. So his claim was that there's no rhetorical devices used. Ganjani means to break. Hankar, Garab means hankar, ego. Ganjani means to break. He named it Garab Ganjani as a response to Anandakan. Yeah, Kavi Santokh Singh Ji named the translation to Japji Sahib, the commentary of Japji Sahib that he provided, this name to break the hankar of anyone that reads it, including Anandakan. So this is a section from that translation, the commentary of the Japji Sahib that Santokh Singh did. I just translated it here. And in the beginning, he writes the reason for creating this commentary. Yeah. And he says, Uday Singh is a very courageous king. He called over me with a lot of respect. And he said this to me. So this is quoting Uday Singh, the Raja, what he said to Kavi Santokh Singh. He says, out of the Gurbani, Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the most important is the Japji Sahib. So out of all Guru Granth Sahib Ji, we hail Japji Sahib to be one of the most important Baniya, which is true. The meanings are deep and amazing. And he further on says, create a commentary which showcasing the rhetorical devices. Provide undoubtable translations from your intellect. In this way, the doubters that are here, they can understand. Take away the strength of their intellect. Yeah. So after hearing this, Santokh Singh gets a job and he starts creating this commentary of the Japji Sahib. This is just a portrait from the Janam Sakhiyan. Janam Sakhiyan are texts that hold historical reference to Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj's time, like their stories on Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And in certain Janam Sakhiyan, we have portraits as well. So this is a portrait of Guru Nanak Dev Ji being challenged by what looks like maybe some yogis. This is dated 1762. It's from the Tour collection. So in the Garab Ganjani, Kavi Santokh Singh goes through many rhetorical devices because his mission was to find the rhetorical devices used in Japji Sahib. And he lists out all these rhetorical devices. Over 80 rhetorical devices are shown in the Japji Sahib through Kavi Santokh Singh Ji's work. He showcases Japji Sahib as an intellectual masterpiece. Yeah. Quite different than how we might see the Japji Sahib today. Okay, so this is just a section from the Garb Ganjani as well, showcasing how Kavi Santokh Singh would analyze Japji Sahib through categories. He would say like, okay, you reach this sporty here, this stanza here. To understand this stanza, you need to know this background. So he gives you backgrounds. In this scenario, it's about Pakhya Pavapar, and he goes through 4 categories that you need to understand before you understand the word Pakhya. Pakhya means to speak. And he's like, okay, you need to understand the 4 types of speech. Yeah, which is para, basanti, madama, bakhri, and he goes through the definitions of that areas of speech. So this is very interesting because even the commentary that's provided in Japji Sahib today, you'll never see a commentary in this depth. Rhetorical devices are out of the picture. Even any devices used in literature are never mentioned. Japji Sahib is just seen as one God, truth is name. And he's without fears, without hate. It's just very monotone. But the way Kavi Santokh Singh presented it is almost like if it's a PhD paper, which that's how he viewed it. Again, speaking about the same stanza, Pakhya Apar, he mentions his knowledge on different languages, as he says Sanskrit, Farsi from Iran, Turki, which is Turkish, Arabic, which is Arabic, Pahlavi, which is from Iran as well, Pushtun, which is from Afghanistan. He mentions that all these languages call for the divine in their own respective ways. And again, this is just translating what the word Pakhya Apar means. Yes?
What does yogi mean?
Yogi is a type of community that practices yoga. Yoga is so out of the 6 shastras, the 6 schools of thought in India, one of them is Yoga Vidya. So yoga is honestly, yoga means connection, union. Yeah, but they have different practices. Often we hear in the West Hatha yoga and stuff like that, hot yoga and whatever. So these kind of derive from their practices. Guru Nanak Dev Ji had quite extensive conversations with the yogis, and they were followers of someone named Gorakhnath. So Gorakhnath was like their leader, and his followers were known to be yogis, and they had about 18 different groups. One of them is called Ai Panth. So Panth means group, Ai was a name. You see that comes up Japji Sahib, Ai Panthi, Sagal Jamati. So Guru Sahib is talking about, he's having a conversation with one of the yogis from that group. Yeah. And at the end of the day, all these communities, their main goal is to connect to the Creator in their own way, and their way was more like physical exercises. Yeah. So I think we talked about this, right? Okay. This is another extract from the Garb Ganjani, and how he obtains meanings through from deriving. Yeah, and for me, my background is engineering. I'm really big on deriving formulas, and so it's really cool how he did this. He's looking at the Pankti Gunvantya Gunde, the stanza Gunvantya Gunde, and traditionally this is how you will read that stanza. Nanak nirgun gun kare Gunvantya Gunde. What he does is really cool. He moves the a to the other side, Gunvant a Gunde, which changes the meaning up. Yeah, so he plays with words to give different meanings. Oftentimes, for one stanza, he'll break the stanza in half, and that half of that stanza will have 5 different meanings. Then he'll go to another 5, and then he'll just break down. So, for example, the Japji Sahib is about 8 angs long, right? Angs is what we don't refer to as pages, we refer to as angs, right? So it's about 8 pages long, right? The Garb Ganjani was about 171 pages. And the reason for that was how in depth he went through the Japji Sahib. So Agun means all types of virtues. So the way he derived that line, he just changed the meaning up totally. From before it was Gunvantya Gunde, that the Creator gives virtues to the ones that have virtues, to the Creator gives all types of virtues to the ones who are virtuous. Okay, so this brings us to one of the most important texts that Santokh Singh had created, called the Suraj Prakash. Yeah. I named it the sun that never sets, because Maharaja Ranjit Singh's rule eventually ends. Yeah, in 1839, Maharaja Ranjit Singh passes away. With that, the political state of Punjab goes in the air, and the annexation by the British takes over in about 10 years' time. So from 1839 to 1849 is when Punjab is now annexed, and you have the two Sikh Anglo wars that happen. And eventually, the sun of the Sikh Raj sets. But Kavi Santokh Singh Ji's text called the Suraj Prakash never said. So where does Santokh Singh create the Suraj Prakash? Remember Raja Uday Singh, right? Raja Uday Singh has hired Santokh Singh. Now Santokh Singh is given a place to write the text, right? He's given funding for sure, but he's given a place to write as well. Because any scholar, for any job that they have to do, they need an environment, a peaceful environment. So this Haveli was gifted to Santokh Singh. I'm going to just go through what you see in the picture here in a second. That picture on the left side is the picture of that same Haveli. Haveli means building. That Santokh Singh wrote this text called Suraj Prakash, which is, we're going to talk about in a second, analyze it as well. This is a picture from the published Suraj Prakash text by Veer Singh in the Punjabi Pasha community. And on the left side you can see, so actually I didn't post it here, but Bhai Veer Singh talks about this text, and I think I have it in the next slide. He talks about how he tries to buy this Haveli 100 years ago. Yeah, but it was, maybe the funding was not available by the community and he was unsuccessful to buy the Haveli. 100 years later, this Haveli is now bought. Yeah, so 100 years later, this is a picture of this from this year. This is Gyani Sher Singh, who is my teacher, and they have, with the support of the community, bought this Haveli where Santokh Singh worked on, and now it's going to become a museum or what have you, for the future to use. And this is in Kent Hill. And again, Kent Hill is in the south, so there's not much of a Sikh population there. Okay, yeah, this is the words of Veer Singh. Uste Kent Hill ran vasan te chalan te tha, which means where Santokh Singh stayed and wrote the Granth and then also died, passed away. Jithe baith ke edda bhara Granth rachya gaya, where he sat down and wrote such a huge text. Because the Suraj Prakash, which text we're going to look into now, is considered a magnum opus, which means a huge epic. Yeah, so like there's about 10,000 pages to that text, and what that text covers is the history from Guru Nanak Dev Ji all the way to Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Yeah, so we'll talk about it in more detail, but just giving you a little trailer. So Para Granth meaning huge Granth, a huge text. Vik gaya te thode arse nu eh sanat ho sakni vi bhul jayegi. So at that time, 100 years ago, Bhai Veer Singh is afraid that our generations to come will forget about Kavi Santokh Singh, because the area, the makan, that Haveli that you just saw, was sold off to other people that were not from the Sikh community, who had no interest of preserving the legacy. शौक है कि उस महान उपकारी दा उसते परिवार ने उसते पंथ ने कोई निशान कायम नहीं रखिया. He said, I'm very saddened, Veer Singh writes, Dr. Veer Singh writes, that I'm very upset that the community, the panth, his family did not take interest in preserving his legacy. And this is amazing because remember I said Santokh Singh is a very controversial figure nowadays. A lot of people that think of it as a very controversial figure, they will never know Bhai Veer Singh wrote all this about Kavi Santokh Singh. That Bhai Veer Singh is the one who typed up his work, published his work, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Publication. Bhai Veer Singh has set up a society to publish, which was called Hind-e-Vajir, and through that publication society, Bhai Veer Singh had typed up Santokh Singh's Granth text. Took him about 70 years to type up such a voluminous text and published it. And this is not a picture of the publication. Unfortunately, I could not find the exact picture of the publication, but this is a publication. This is a picture of a different publication. So, published Suraj Prakash for first time 1927, second time revised is 1935. He provides commentary and footnotes. That's Veer Singh on the left side. So, Bhai Veer Singh, have you ever heard about the Singh Sabha movement? Bhai Veer Singh was part of the Singh Sabha movement, right? He was from the Amritsar side. There was two Singh Sabha movements, because Punjab was one big Punjab at that time, right? Lenda and Charda Punjab, Western and Eastern Punjab was one. So Lahore and Amritsar were both in Punjab. Now it's not, right? Lahore is separate. But there was two Singh Sabhas movements, one from Lahore, one from Amritsar. What's crazy is both scholars from both communities respected Kavi Santokh Singh. Today, we don't respect Kavi Santokh Singh because we say that after the Singh Sabha movement, a lot has changed. We'll cover that in a second. But we say nowadays that we don't respect Kavi Santokh Singh because our modern scholars did not. But our modern scholars did. In fact, it's because of them we have the text of his today. So this is Mahant Sumer Singh, who was he was part of the Amritsar Sahib Singh Sabha. Veer Singh was part of the Lahore then. So Mahant Sumer Singh writes in his own text, right, Gurbat Prem Prakash, in the 1880s, he says, there is no Granth, and I guess this is translated, there is no other Granth that is equal to this one. It is a treasure and praise of the Satguru. It's a boat to carry all the Singhs. This is the praise of Sri Santokh Singh. So Sumer Singh writes this in the text in praising Santokh Singh. So I'm just giving you another excerpt of the scholars of that time, what they thought of Santokh Singh. And there's much more. I couldn't include everything. But scholars like Pyara Singh Padam, scholars like Veer Singh and Sumer Singh, you've heard already. But any book that you pick up on Sikh history today, those scholars, respected Kavi Santokh Singh. So what was the source for his text? Again, remember his text is the history of Guru Nanak to Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And his sources were primarily these things you see up on screen. The Janam Sakhiyan, right? So Janam Sakhi again are Guru Nanak Dev Ji's history. So any history you hear about Guru Nanak Dev Ji, how, any history of their travels, their udasiyan, they all come down from the Janam Sakhiyan. And there's many different Janam Sakhi, that's like a talk on its own. And there's different views on Janam Sakhiyan as well. But that was one of his sources. Then you had the Pancho Sakhi, which is not available today by Ram Kaur. And we only have about 100 Sakhis out of 500 Sakhis that were once available. Texts sort of by Mani Singh Ji, like the Guru Balas, Sikhan de Bhagat Malla, etc., Gyan Ritavani, and his personal traveling and research. Okay, and there's also some miracles as well, which he notates in his work. He says that, so there's a story that's passed down orally and is based upon his writing here. Orally, the tradition states that Kavi Santokh Singh was not able to find all parts of history. Yeah. There were some certain areas which he could not find. One day, a Singh came to his house and stayed the night. A random person came to his house, stayed the night. Santokh Singh fed him, provided a lot of love for him. When that Singh left the next morning, Santokh Singh finds a bag that was left behind that Singh with a lot of text, a lot of parchiyan, like letters. That was the information he needed. And he quotes this in his text. I found, surprisingly, a collection of different parchiyan, different letters that contained all the history of the Gurus. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit about the format and the organization. We're almost done here, and then we'll go into Q&A. The format of the text is based around the sun. Yeah, so Suraj Prakash, Suraj means sun, Prakash means illumination. Yeah, so the text is called Gur Pratap Suraj Granth, which means the Guru's Pratap, the Guru's illumination. Suraj Prakash, the sun-like Guru whose illumination goes throughout the whole universe. Yeah. So the way he divides the text is very clever. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji's stories, which are under Nanak Prakash, are divided by sunrise and sunset, Purbarad, Uttararad, and then when you go into the history of Guru Angad Dev Ji to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, is divided by Ras. So the history of Guru Angad Dev to Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji is in the 12 Rases. Ras means like months. Like there's 12 months in a year. So it's 12 Rases which divide the history of Guru Angad to Guru Tegh Bahadur. Then from Guru Tegh Bahadur, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, their stories are divided into the 6 seasons. So in India there's 6 seasons, right? In the West we have 4 seasons. The Sheh Rutta and Do An. An means solstices. There's a winter solstice and there's a summer solstice, right? The highest point of the sun and the lowest point of the sun, right? So this is how the text is divided, and it was completed in 1843, just before he passes away. So, height without weight. The scholars at that time were not egotistical. So he writes this in his own Granth, which I think a lot of scholars today should read. He says, Jahan pool mujhte kuch hoi, O Khalsa ji, if I have made a mistake, sun path kara roz nahi koi, please don't get mad at me. Kirpa tar so leho banai, you do your blessing upon me and you can change whatever you want. Jion Satguru Sikhan Manapai, as ever it pleases the Sikhs of the Guru, ever it pleases them, you can do whatever you want. This text is yours. Yeah? So a lot of days today, there will be question about how Santokh Singh presented a certain Sakhi or presented a certain story of the Gurus. And they'll be like, wait, that does not realign with the way we see Sikhi today. Right? Santokh Singh says, hey, look, Sikho, if there's anything you don't like in my Granth, if there's anything you don't like in my text, here's the keys. You can do whatever you want. You can change it if you want. What author writes 10,000 page text and then says all rights belong to the Khalsa? When you write a book, it says all rights are reserved to the author. All rights are reserved to the author's family. He says all rights are reserved to you. He also mentions the need of writing this text. He mentions how the itihas, the history of the Guru, cannot be found in one place. For this reason, around the world I will go around India, I'll go around the places the Guru sent me to, all the Katha of the Guru, and write it down for the community. This is how he starts out the first ras, the first section of Guru Angad Dev Ji's Katha. So this is a modern portrait of Kavi Santokh Singh. We actually saw the old portrait. Yeah, this is a re-illustration of the original portrait, which still exists today, is held by his descendants, Kavi Santokh Singh's descendants. But it's a real illustration done by Jatinder Singh. But you can see this is how he looked like, very royal. Kirpan, Qatar on the other side, very Surbiri, very Jangi looking, a mala on his hands, very royal artifacts you can see he's decorated with. And this is a modern interpretation of Kavi Santokh Singh. So, about us, we're part from Basic Sikhi, as you know. Basic Sikhi, like Bhai Supreet Singh had mentioned before, we have a YouTube channel, so you can check us out. Here is my personal Instagram page. There's a website called Sikh Translation, which is a project of Everything's 13, which is working on translating these scriptures that we talked about today, the texts we talked about today, the 18th century text, 19th century text. You guys can get this off of me anytime. And now it's Q&A time. Okay, thank you. So we can, you can either write down your questions on your cards, and if there's any verbal questions, I can take those now. Otherwise, the cards will be gathered by the Sevadars here, and we'll take it from there. Yes? It's been published. There is a translation available in Punjabi, a commentary available in Punjabi, by Ajit Singh Olik, and there's no English translations for the whole text. There's some scholars now, they're working on translating little parts, but is not. Bhai Veer Singh has not translated the whole thing. They've only provided commentary wherever they felt like they wanted to provide, like some parts of the language which have become lost, right? So language changes over time. So that part they provided commentary on. Yeah. What's interesting is that Ajit Singh Olik, even though he provided the commentary of all Suraj Prakash, there's things that he actually takes out, which he doesn't personally agree with. So he actually takes those sections out. And Bhai Veer Singh, for the most part, does not. Yeah. Yes, in the back. Okay, the question is, should we read Pant Prakash first or Suraj Prakash first? Great question. So, Pant Prakash is written by someone named Ratan Singh Pangu. If you guys don't know, it's a text written in the 18th century, which describes the history. Thank you, Vijay. This describes the history of Punjab. Of the Singhs. Thank you, Vijay. Which describes the history of the Singhs. So Sakhis like Bhai Mehtab Singh. Thank you. and how they take the head off of go to Harmandir Sahib and do all these different things, and Bota Singh, Garaja Singh. So all the history of the 18th century Singhs, Sikhs that fought for their independence, fought for their journey, that Chota ka lukara, vaddo ka lukara, there's genocides that happened as well in the 18th century. So for whoever doesn't know, there was 2 genocides that happened in the 18th century as well with the Sikhs. So that whole history is written in a text called Pant Prakash by someone named Ratna Singh Pangu, who was from the Pangu Missile. And so the question was, which one do we read first, Suraj Prakash or Pant Prakash? Honestly, Viji, if you can read any of those texts, that's amazing. Just because the language is in Braj, and like we said before, it's a language that we're not very well acquainted with as well anymore as a community. So any hands you can get on history is amazing. For me, I'm still studying these texts, because they're so big. It'll take you like your whole life to study them. I'm still studying these texts, and I enjoy every time I study them. I hope that helps. Yeah, Haji. A quick overview of the Sikh Sabha movement. The Sikh Sabha movement was a attempt to formalize the Sikh community and give its own presence. Yeah. So, and as a result of different groups trying to bring the Sikh community down, saying that, hey, you don't have your own identity. You're actually just part of this group, or maybe you're just part of this group, or maybe you just came out of nowhere. Like you don't really have your own identity, right? So Sikh Sabha movement was a attempt to say, hey, we are Sikhs, and this is our these are our documents. This is what we carry. This is our faith. We're separate. We're a separate identity, right? Because that's the risk of being universal. You could be a universal faith, but then people are like, oh, so you're universal. So what's your own presence, right? So that's where Guru Sahib gave us the Khalsa. The Khalsa is something that's very unique, right? That protects that. So if universal is a garden of flowers, right? Guru Granth Sahib Ji is that garden of flowers, which speaks to different traditions, right? And like the Kavi Darbar, you saw it speaking to different faiths, different texts are being translated, right? There's no one side, right? But the Khalsa is that fence that guards that garden, that has their own identity, that has their own traditions, but then respect and preserve the traditions of the past as well. Yeah. So the Sikh Sabha movement was that attempt. Today, what we see, personally, what I would say is that the mindset that we carry today is a neo version of the Sikh Sabha movement. Okay, sure. I'll take these questions now. Oh, there's a lot of questions. So we're booked until 9:30. I guess you want to use that time. I thought you guys let me off easy. Okay, how do we continue to keep faith when we feel all odds are against us? Okay, great question. How do we continue to keep faith even when all odds are against us? This is a personal. Okay, so I'm going to deviate from our conversation today because the question deviates from the conversation as well. When you're on your personal journey of spirituality, you're trying to develop your connection to maybe the community, you're trying to develop your connection to the Creator, you're trying to find your place in all of this. It's bound that you're going to be faced against different odds. Each odd that you face is your course. It's your course, is your journey of becoming beautiful. There's no way, and this is probably pretty used out there, but there's no way to see the rainbow without the storm. The reason that you're having these troubles in life, the reason you're having these things presented to you is because there's someone that actually cares about you, that wants you to grow. Imagine you have a kid, and we were all kids at one point, right? And our parents are like, hey, you're going to go to school, you're going to go there no matter what. I remember me, personally, I was sent to India to study for 9th grade. And I was like, what are you doing? How could you do this to me? All my friends are here. Why are you sending me away? I was like, Bas tu jana hi utthe. I was like, what did I do wrong? You were always brought up like, then hostel page dena apa. You're gonna send you to government boarding school if you don't listen properly. And I mean, I listened, but they still sent me. And when after I came back and grew up, and I was like, you know what? At that time I was so depressed. I was like, man, I hate being here, you know. But now being in this field of, you know, learning Sikhi and focusing on Sikh studies, I look back to that time and like, wow, I'm blessed. You know, maybe my parents didn't know why they were sending me, but the Guru knew. He sent me for a reason, so I could be accustomed to our traditions, you know, our values and culture that we have, which is, you know, seen in Sikhi as well. You know? So I would say that there are different odds that come up in your life, or courses that we go through, and each course won't be easy, but we come out with a certificate every time, you know, and that certificate shows that, hey, you received this medal honor. Now you can, you know, if when someone else has that same problem, they'll come to you and be like, you're like, you know, I was just there 2 years ago, man. Like, you got this. It'll be okay. You see it from a different angle, you know. And maybe that's what wisdom is, you know. We look at adults, we look at our you know, grandfathers or grandmothers, and they carry something that might not be academia-wise. They might not have a PhD, but they're very intelligent in their own way. And what is that? Is that wisdom they carried throughout these odds. I hope that answered the question. Can you explain the importance of nickname? Unrelated. Haji, great question. The importance of nickname cannot be said. I would say that, you know, there's probably so much you can hear about how important nickname is. But me, I'll tell you personally, nickname is more than just a chore that we should do. And no matter what your nickname is, it could be a subjective thing. You know, some people's nickname could just be Japji Sab, someone could be Japji Sab Jab Sab, someone could be just be Mool Mantar. Whatever your nickname is, yeah, it's your dedication, it's your commitment to your spiritual path. Yeah. And for everyone that does not know, nickname is like a daily prayer that Sikhs do. And it's your connection to, it's your commitment to your spiritual path. You know, it's like life is repetitive. You know, how many genocides have happened already? They happen, and they're going to keep happening. How many people, how many buildings have been created and then destroyed and created again? It's going to happen. You know, history repeats itself. Human mentality repeats itself. What do we do in our head all day long? We just think. We think over and over and over again. It doesn't stop, right? Human life is repetition. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth again. You can't just brush your teeth once to be like, I'm never gonna brush it again, right? You can't take a shower and you be like, I'm never taking a shower again. Otherwise, it will smell you right now. The way that human life works is repetition. Nickname is repetition. Yeah. All of Gurbani is meant to be repeated over and over and over again. Why? Because it fits into the rhythm of life. Yeah. And it doesn't speak to us on a logical level, but it will speak to us on a spiritual level. Okay? The repetition is not logical. Yes, sorry.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes, you can, of course.
So why, instead of doing the same Bani every single day, why not do different Bani every single day?
You should do that for sure. I mean, it shouldn't be an aesthetic thing. It should just be an add-on thing. Like, there must be a reason where we're mandated a certain set of Baniya, right? Historically, we can see that set of Bani come up many times. People contemporary to Guru Gobind Singh, like Bhai Nandlal, which we didn't talk about in Disciples, was another divan in that court of poets. So he has written a text called Tankhan Amma, and just 2-3 other texts that he's written. But particularly talking about the Khalsa ethos, you can find that in that text. And within there, there'll be a conversation between the Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and Bhai Nandlal. Bhai Nandlal will be like, all right, tell me what a Sikh should do every morning. And Guru Gobind Singh responds by saying, do Japji Sab Jab Sab. Or what should a Sikh do every evening? Go to the Gurdwara. So there's like a certain set of mandated Baniya, or mandated scriptures, right? And I would say there must be a reason beyond our comprehension that the Guru has orchestrated in that way. Yeah. Personally, I would not be here right now if I didn't take that extra step and look at other Baniya. You know, not saying that I'm someone special or anything. It's just saying that, like, you need to definitely venture out there 100%. You know, but I understand that, like, in a time like we have today, where time is of the essence, right? You might be in a situation where you have 15 minutes, and you're probably saying to yourself, should I just read Japji Sab again, or should I read a new Bani, right? I personally would say that, again, repetition of Japji Sahib is the more divine spiritual experience. So maybe by repeating that Bani, the Guru will hear your desire of finding new Baniya, and they'll present you with the teachers and that time, that environment to let that flourish. Thank you for asking that. For someone who is just getting into Sikhi, which text is best for them? How should they approach the history? For someone getting into it, Professor Sahib Singh has done a great job. If you understand Punjabi, Professor Sahib Singh's text of the Guru's history is very easy to read for a Punjabi person. It's not overly long. Surya Prakash is not really meant for you to become a historian. Yeah, but that will take forever. Surya Prakash is meant to be very long on purpose. Is meant to be more dedicated around devotion, inspiring devotion. Thank you, inspiring devotion into you, and looking at the Guru in a different way. Yeah, that's what Surya Prakash's mission is. If you just want to read history, Professor Sahib Singh is good if you understand Punjabi. Gyani Gyan Singh is written Tavri Guru Khalsa, which is the summary of Surya Prakash. So Gyani Gyan Singh is another scholar who has lived during the Sikh Raj, that has also lived during the Singh Sabha movement as well. So you can actually see a lot of detail in his work, how he actually writes. He starts off writing with Braj, but then he goes into Punjabi. So Tavari Guru Khalsa is another good one. You can read that in Punjabi. It's also very easy to read. As Sikh scholars, that's our go-to. So if we're like, let's say we have to go to a program and they're like, oh hey, talk about Guru Hargobind Ji and their sons and stuff, right? So very specific detail, and you don't have time to find that history. What you do is you open up Tavari Guru Khalsa, you go to that section, you can read it there in like one paragraph, and you get that understanding. So Tavari Guru Khalsa is another good one. But if you can only understand English, then I'm sorry, I personally don't know any texts, in English that would be good that would be like good to give you an understanding of Sikh history. They might exist, I just don't know them. My focus has always been 18th century, 19th century texts. Are the Nihangs of today the same as Puratan Nihang Singhs? Good question to ask them. I think I will honestly would if you guys liked what you heard today and you guys would call us back, I would like to probably do a talk on each Sampradaya. So today was Gyani Sampradaya, maybe next one could be Nihang Singhs, and next one could be Udasis, and so on and so forth. But are they the same as we see in the past? For the most part, I would say yes. Out of all the communities that I have looked into, I would say Nihang Singhs are the ones that look like they preserve what they've been given. Remember, Sampradaya means passed down from one generation to another generation. It looks like Nihang Singhs do that very well. And a lot of Gurukar outside of Punjab do that very well as well. Which there could be a couple of reasons for that, but yes, I would say the answer to this question is yes. Are the Nihangs of today the same as Puratan Nihang Singhs? If you're talking about like Nihang Singhs that are just like someone like in their room woke up one day like, I'm a Nihang Singh, then I can't speak for that person. But I'm talking about people that actually live in the dulls, in the armies, live it, breathe it every single day. I'm talking about those guys, yeah. Can you please briefly, if anyone has a follow-up question, just raise your hand. If anyone has a verbal question that you want to ask, they can. Can you please briefly cover the etiquette of the relationship of student-teacher, Vidyarthi, Ustad, finding, securing a teacher, learning from multiple teachers, etc. What consists the difference between regular teacher and Ustad? Great question. So Ustad is just another word of teacher. So Ustad is from the Farsi, Persian background. Guru would be from the Sanskrit background. Teacher would be English, right? I don't know what background that would be. But can you briefly cover the etiquette of relationship between student and teacher? Ideally, if we're talking about the Gyani Sampardaya, then the relationship should be such where the student is ready to go in as an empty slate. Yeah. So the student shouldn't really come in with their own. They can, and for example, you have like this example is given a lot, right? Between Arjun and Krishna. If anyone doesn't know, the Bhagavad Gita It's written as a conversation between a student and their teacher. The teacher is the Christian and the student is Arjun, right? Arjun has a bunch of questions. That's all that the Bhagavad Gita is, question answer. And he presents those questions to his teacher, and the teacher resolves the questions. So it's not necessarily that you have to be a complete slate, empty slate. Sometimes a person might not be that. But one key value that you should have is Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. That the person that I'm going to learn from, the Guru has guided me to this person. May I have faith in their words. Yeah, may I have faith that whatever they're telling me is true. That's one. Another quality I would say is Nimrata. Nimrata means humility. Kavi Santokh Singh, what did he carry? Humility. To say that, hey, I wrote all this, took me that many years, and I'm not stamping it and saying this is perfect. I'm saying that you can change it if you want to, if it's your happiness. Yeah, he looks at us. We're the people he's talking to, right? He's looking at us in a higher pedestal. He's saying, you're higher than me. You had the ability to change what I wrote. So as a learner, we should have the ability to say, you know what, I could be wrong. I came with this mindset, but I might be wrong. Can you guide me? Finding and securing a teacher, learning from multiple teachers. I would say that nowadays finding a teacher is very hard. Yeah. I personally just had the itcha. I just was in college, and I had the desire to learn how to read Gurbani. That was my story. I wanted to learn how to read Gurbani, and I tried to look for a teacher. I spoke to some Gursikhs. I myself wasn't practicing, but I wanted to learn. And everyone I talked to, they're like, oh, he just learned Santhya. And I was like, okay, I gotta learn Santhya. So I found a teacher who's from the UK. Yeah. But the thing was, it was his job to teach. So he said he got a 3-day trial class. After that, you'll be charged $100 a month, right? And you have class every day with me, right? I was like, sick, cool. So I went to my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, can I get $100? He's like, for what? I'm like, I want to learn how to read Gurbani. He's like, Bade Hatya. He's like, there's nothing to it, right? Like my family wasn't really on board at that time, and I was so sad. And then eventually, I found a friend. He's like, why are you so sad? I was like, I want to learn Santhya. I want to learn how to read Gurbani, and I don't have the money for it. He's like, you don't need money to learn Gurbani. What's wrong with you? He says, a free teacher at the Gurdwara. I was like, oh really? And so I went. I saw that there was a teacher there. And he was sitting, and there was like a class of students sitting on the floor, and they were learning Gurbani, how to read Gurbani, Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And when I walked in, I sat in the back. The teacher, he had like a gutka in his hands, and so he looked up, he saw someone came, and he looked back down, right? And then he did this thing, and then I just sat there, right? I didn't have the strength to go up and be like, can you teach me? And then the day ended. I was too scared to, after everyone left, I was too scared to talk to him. So I ran out of the class after the class finished. The next day I got there again, right? Sat in the back. And the teacher quickly comes, slowly comes, pretends like he doesn't look at me. He walks a little backwards, and he comes next to me, and he's like, what are you here for, right? And I was like, I would like to learn how to read Gurbani. And he's like, do you know Punjabi? I was like, maybe just a few letters. And he's like, Bajate, like come sit in the class, right? So I sat there. The first day I didn't learn anything. Like I wasn't like, everyone else was learning except for me. I was just sitting there. Next week class happens again. I just sat there. So like a few days I just sat there, and he's like, okay, tu sana kuch, right? Let me hear your Mool Mantra, right? And I said it, and he's like, what is this? Because I didn't know Punjabi well. And he's like, what is this? And then he starts teaching me, And so that was my first teacher, who was from the Sikh Sampardai. And he taught me like a little baby. And I spent 2 years with him. So I talk about multiple teachers. Then I found his teacher, who he learned from, who taught me all the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So I spent 6 years with him. So 6 and 8. Yeah, I spent 8 years learning Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So it's a long task. It's not easy. You can finish it earlier depending on how much time you have and how much time does the teacher has. But someone like me, who was coming fresh off the block, never knew my tanke from my tatte and how to say roti and how to say anything else. For me, my tongue and my level of pronouncing Punjabi was horrible, so it took me a long time. It might be easier for you. So after that, I met Gyani Sher Singh, the person who bought the Haveli, and they taught me how to understand Gurbani. So I spent 8 years just learning how to pronounce Gurbani, and then I spent the rest learning what Gurbani means, the context behind it, the history behind it, how the root language of each word that's being presented. And so it's a very long task, but I'm very grateful that I was able to find one teacher that led me to another teacher. This is a text of its own, man. Okay. How do you help a friend, family member falling off the Guruji's path? How do you help a friend who's falling off the Guru's path? Honestly, you can't even help yourself, honestly, if I be honest. Like, this is just such a path where, like, no one knows what's going to happen the next day. Yeah. Today I could be in front of you, tomorrow I could be in the gutters. Like, no one knows where this mind will take you. Because this mind doesn't stay put. It's so, you know, and Gurbani talks about this a lot, but it's very fickle, very chanchal, you know. Different analogies are given. It's a monkey, you know, it's jumping up and down, you know. Today it's like, you know what, I want to do part. Tomorrow it's like, I want to watch, like, I want to binge watch on Netflix. Third day is like, you know what, I heard about this frat party, I want to go there. It's always changing. That nickname we talked about before, or this physical identity we didn't talk about, the physical identity we have keeps us in line. It keeps your mind in line. The physical is only a derivative of what your mind wants. If my mind wants me to go, and this is not going to like the Upanishads and the Vedanta, and you can go through that too, but this is just a very simple analogy. If my mind wants to pick up that paper, my mind thinks of that thought, my intellect processes that thought, and then my hankar, my ego, executes that thought. Does that make sense? My mind produces a thought, my buddhi evaluates it and then creates a decision, and then my hankar executes it. It's more detailed than that, but I'm just giving you a simple execution. So the body is based off what the mind wants. To keep the mind in line, you might have to keep the body in line. Yeah. So someone who's falling off the path, you know, I would just tell them that, hey, do ardas. If you're interested in coming back on the path. If you're not interested, you know, then I'll do your ardas. But ardas means prayer, right? I'll pray for you. You know, I will, and if you're the one that's falling off the path, I'll say ardas is the key thing. You know, that, hey, Guru Sahib, you are here. You are here when no one else is here for me. You know how I am. It doesn't matter. I don't have to show it to anyone else. You know me. You know, and I'm yours. You do whatever you want with me. You know, and that relationship of you and the Guru is very subjective, is very personal. No one can judge that relationship. No one can say, hey, you're not wearing this color dastar, so you're not a Sikh. Hey, you're not having your dadi out, you're not a Sikh. Hey, you don't have any hair on your head, you're not a Sikh. No one can say that to you because you have your own personal relationship to the Guru. And the Guru knows who you are and where you're from and how your journey involves. Hope that helps. Okay, when you spoke about the Garab Ganjani, you said it was written in Sadhu Kari. What is Sadhu Kari and what is the difference compared to Gurmukhi? Sorry for the spelling. Sadhu Kari. Okay, so Garab Ganjani was not written in Sanskrit, which I think maybe you're talking about. Oh, you're probably talking about Braj Bhasha, right? Okay. Braj was a language that we talked about, was like Western Hindi, you know, which was used by Kavis mainstream across India. Yeah. So the Kavis wrote in that dialect to communicate with the mainstream population. Yeah. It's like, you know, you wanna do prachar, and I want to do prachar to a different nationality. I'm not gonna go there and be like, you know, Sirina Nekapad. I'm not gonna give them the whole like traditional katha. I'm gonna be like, hey man, how's it going? Like, oh hey, what's your name? Who are you? What's your tradition? I'm like, yeah, I'm a Sikh. I'm gonna talk to them in English, right? So in the same way, the Kavis, they wrote in the Gurmukhi Lipi, which was the writing style was Gurmukhi, which is what we call the Punjabi letters, but the language that was incorporated in that Lipi was Braj Bhasha, which is the Western Hindi. So what is the difference between Gurmukhi? So Gurmukhi is just a Lipi. Gurmukhi can have any language in it. Just like English, you can write Spanish with English, you can write French with English, you could try to write Punjabi with English, which is horrible, but you can try. So in the same way, Gurmukhi can be used to write different languages as well. Any follow-up questions? You spoke about the SGPC and destroy a lot of our history and knowledge relating to Sampradas. How did the knowledge survive and what was lost to us during this time? A lot of physical monuments, institutions, buildings were lost. And how do we have some of it? Well, some of it is thanks to the different settlers that came to Punjab. So when Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Punjab was flourishing, Europeans came, like for example Alexander Gardner, who's an American from Wisconsin, he came. Napoleons came, French people came, Europeans. So Punjab was very active in trade, in culture, in arts during that 40-year period of Sikh Raj. So a lot of people from different backgrounds came and they studied Sikhi. And their studies, like even that one picture I showed you of Harmandir Sahib, that was by a French person. That portrait, you know. So a lot of documentation of the Sikhs was actually done during that period because the environment was so great. Yeah. So when the physical was then destroyed, or as they put it, cleaned up, I don't want to blame one community to do that. Yeah? So it's not just the SGPC. There's a lot behind it. SGPC has done great stuff as well. You know. And SGPC does not only have one school of thought. There's so many different people in SGPC that drive it their own. They try to drive it whatever way they want. Like you could be in SGPC tomorrow, and I'm not gonna say that it's your fault that this happened. Right? It's just like how a committee works. You know? There could be different mindsets in the committee. So not necessarily the SGPC is to blame. Let's get that out there. SGPC has done great stuff, and I will be cancelled if I said otherwise. But at the same time, a lot of things have been destroyed. And I've watched this one TED Talk once by this Indian guy who was talking about the Mahabharata and why it's referred to as mythology. And it's referred to mythology because there's no physical proof, right? What that means is that history without a physical identity becomes mythology. Does that make sense? You know, so today, where the two Shote Sahibzade, that Thanda Burj doesn't exist anymore, right? It's just like a little plastic thing sitting in the corner. You know, the ittan vich chunne ke, those things don't exist anymore. There's so much that we have lost, which is crazy because it was preserved right before the 20th century. It was there because we have pictures, we have photographs, we have portraits, we have all these things. They were there, like the Samad of Sant Singh Gyani we talked about. The Bunge were there. And they're destroyed just recently, you know, and an effect to maybe commercialize. That could be one. It could be less. Maybe there's nothing behind it that's sinister. Maybe just the effect of commercialization, which Harmandir Sahib is pretty good for that, right? So a lot of things that have been destroyed. Maybe the reason for that could be less sinister. It could just be something simple. But yes, I hope that answers the question. You spoke about how this is not okay. What is a missile? Great. A missile is just a community or a group of Sikhs that were establishing their freedom or their rule in whatever area they were governing. Okay, so there was about 18 missiles of that time from the 1708 to 1799. Sukracharya missile, Pangi missile, and the list goes on. Gyani Gyan Singh in this Tavari Guru Khals has written about all of his missiles in quite detail. For example, Maharaja Ranjit Singh was from a missile himself. He was from the Sukracharya missile. He came out of that missile, and he either by conquest, meaning that he went to go to get to the other missiles and married the woman of that missile. And when you're someone's jija, then they're not gonna fight you anymore, right? So he did that, or some were just automatically be like, hey, you're doing a great job, you're becoming the next king, why don't we just become yours, why don't we just side with you, right? So missiles were Sikh groups that were establishing their own rule in their areas. Make sense? What relevance does some Maharaja what relevance does Dasa Maharaj and Sarvalo Maharaj have in the Panth? Okay, so these are two texts written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Dasam Gurbani and Sarvalo Gurbani. What reference do they have in the Panth? It's a huge reference because a lot of our, if you look at it from a historical point of view, there's a lot of history that's contained in these two texts. If you're looking at a spiritual point of view, there's a lot of Khalsa ethos that's presented in this text, whereas the Guru Granth Sahib, the Ad Guru Granth Sahib is very universal. It doesn't really speak. It can, but from a very layman view, it seems to speak to many different traditions, where the Dasam and the Sarabdal seem to speak strictly to the Khalsa. So it's more designed towards the Khalsa. So what references I have in the Panth? I would say study it, research it. It's very valuable. We are actually going through a few different projects with Dasam right now to try to demystify, because there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of there's a lot of things being thrown on in the air about a text that no one has even studied. And honestly, if you were to study that text, you'll be there all day long, maybe for a couple of years, a lot of years, because I'm still there. I'm still studying it. So honestly, when someone passes on information, you should question it before you take it upon yourself, because most time the others, that person has never even read that scripture, the text, and other times they just picked it up from someone else. There's a really good book in English about the Dasam Granth called Sri Dasam Granth, Facts Beyond Doubts. Actually, I have it here. If we have time, I'll present it up there. Yeah, if we have time. And Facts Upon Doubts, really amazing book, amazing, absolutely amazing job. It's done by the S. Guru Granth Sahib Academy in Malaysia. They've made this book, and the free PDF is available online. You can also buy it for $10. Just gotta pay for shipping. Okay, what granths do you suggest people who are coming into Sikhi to read? So my handwriting was really bad in school. I was notorious for horrible handwriting. But I feel great because I'm part of you guys now. No offense. What granths do you suggest people who are coming to Sikhi to read? I don't know what this word says. Okay, where did the Nihang Singh Sampardai come from? So Nihang Singh Sampardai, according to their own sources, there's a text called Tavarik Guru Khalsa, Tavarik Nihang Singh, something like that, which goes through the history of Nihang Singhs, Bhai and Nihang Singh. So according to themselves, they attribute their Sampardai from two places. One is Baba Fateh Singh, the youngest son, Sabzada of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. They attribute their lineage started from them. And another place is Baba Buddha Ji, from who is contemporary to many gurus. So that is a lecture of its own. Okay, I just think it means who are new to Sikhi, what do you encourage them to read? What do you suggest people to read? If you're new to Sikhi, I would say the best thing to start off is Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and just learning how to read Guru Granth Sahib Ji is very important. Just because once you get yourself familiar to the Gurmukhi, Lipi, and Guru Granth Sahib Ji has so many different languages that you connect with, you get acquainted to the style of poetry that's written in 19th century, 18th century texts. So once you learn Guru Granth Sahib Ji, you have to read it properly, and then you can start learning from another ustad of how to understand Guru Granth Sahib Ji. That language behind Guru Granth Sahib Ji is very similar to Braj, or I would say this: majority of Guru Granth Sahib Ji is written in a language that's very similar to Braj, if not Braj. Yeah, and so it's a very common language across India. Who are we to name Kathavachiks and Kirtanis nowadays with the title Gyani? Okay, who are we to name Kathavachiks and Kirtanis nowadays with the title Gyani? How does one attain that title in modern times? Great question. That's a really good question, because there's no systematic approach to this, right? It's if you're in the academia world, you get your bachelor's, you got your master's, you got your PhD, you got a doctor, you're a doctorate. But in the Gyani world, how does that work? It's pretty much you become a Gyani, but no one will know. You probably spend 15 years studying, but no one will know. No one will be like, hey man, you earned 15 years, here's a certificate of Gyani, and you go out there and do your job. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I would say that you just you just gotta keep on doing your learning and be humble about it. And the satkar that your vidya carries, the Panth will acknowledge it one day when you speak. I would imagine one day when you speak out there on stages and do talks and stuff, the Panth will be like, hey, you know what? This guy has studied something. I think he's a Gyani. So maybe that way. And then, but yeah, in modern times, there's no systematic approach to how to. At least I don't see one. Being in the Sampradaya myself, learning from different teachers within that Sampradaya, I don't really see a systematic approach to it. Maybe in the future there'll be a development to that. I think we're very young faith, only 500 years old. I think there's a lot of things that we'll see in the coming years in our generation, and things that our kids will see, according to this question. Where there will be courses made, systematical courses made, and stuff like that, because they're being made now. In the background. Are we to trust Kavi Santya? Are we to treat Kavi Santokh Singh's writing as Gurbani or just literature? Really good answer, really good question. So Kavi Santokh Singh Ji's writings revolve around Gurbani, right? When he says what is his main reference point, he doesn't mention the Vedas, the Simritis, the Quran. He doesn't mention anything. He says Guru Granth Sahib Ji and Dasam Granth Sahib Ji is my source. Is my reference to my understanding of what Sikhi is. Yeah. So I would say that it's very high up there because it talks about Gurbani, right? It talks about the Gurus, right? Anything that talks about the Gurus, anyone that talks about the Gurus should be respected. Do we treat it as Gurbani or just literature? I honestly, when I was in India, what I learned there was that people treat anything that has words written on it as if it's like God, right? Like let's say if this paper were to fall down, people will pick it up, and this were my classmates in 9th grade. They'll pick it up and they'll do this to it and they'll put it down. Right? It was a respect for literature, it was a respect for vidya, it was a respect for knowledge, right? And Gurbani, we treat Gurbani in the same way. What is Guru Granth Sahib Ji? What is it made out of? It's words, right? It's literally literature. It's speaking to scholars. It's speaking to people that are literate. So I would say, and unliterate as well. But I would say yes. From the Indian kind of dynamic, you're supposed to treat all literature in the same kind of way. How come we don't have Katha in Darbar Sahib anymore? I don't know. I haven't done proper research into when. Well, I do know when Katha stopped. It stopped after Maharaj Ji Singh, kind of like, the head Granthi system eventually evolved. And I would imagine the Singh Sabha movement had a very big role in that. And again, the destruction of the Bungis around Darbar Sahib and the Katha being stopped is correlated with each other, right? Because the Bungis were what they were doing, they were teaching, right? What does Katha do? They teach, right? It's a way to disregard teaching. Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. Why it was taken out, maybe, I don't know. But what it has done is disregarded teaching. Yeah. So, but when does it happen exactly? It's hard to say. I would say, but somewhere between the Singh Sabha movement and onwards. Haji.
Is it Manji Sahib a part of the Bhai Sahib complex?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Manji Sahib. So Katha happens in Manji Sahib today, and it's a very pristine stage for scholars to go on to. So yes, it does happen in Manji Sahib. It just doesn't happen in Darbar Sahib itself. Back then, Gyani was placed after Singhs. How did it mirror to the front for placing by? How did it? Someone else want to try? Harveer Singh? I think this will be better. Here you go, buddy. Mic is all yours. If you need it.
It's my question, I'll tell you. I'll explain
Go ahead, Benji.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, I think in one of the slides it said that it was like Bhai something Singh Gyani.
Yeah.
And my question was, how did Gyani make its way to like the front?
Really good question. Really good
That's
question.
what I was curious
Yeah,
about.
I think with Sampradaya, like we said, it develops over time. Yeah, but Sampradaya isn't made just in one room. Like for example, let's say you guys are connecting all the SSAs, right? then you connect all the SSAs, the next generation, they learn from what you did, right? They pick up from what you did, and they do the same that you did, and they continue on, it becomes a Samprada itself, right? So Samprada is not just limited to that time period. Well, we're kind of focusing on Sampradas connected to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, but honestly, we're all connected to Guru Gobind Singh Ji in one way or another, right? So things just develop over time, Benji. So like before, like Bhai Mani Singh, we don't call them Gyani. We just say Bhai Mani Singh Shaheed, right? Bhai Guru Baksh Singh, they don't have the word Gyani. The Gyani word starts with Surat Singh, Bhai Surat Singh Gyani, and it was there before. And now it kind of replaced Bhai. In the modern days, you say, Gyani Sukha Singh, Gyani Sher Singh. You won't say Bhai Sher Singh Gyani anymore. So it's just changed over time. Honestly, I like Bhai something Gyani. I think that's cool. Thank you, Benji, for revealing yourself.
You're welcome.
Okay, it's 8:22 right now. How are you guys doing in terms of time? Yeah, okay. Not too tired? All right, awesome. I wish you could say the same. The way the Darbar Sahib was set back in the day, before SGPC, removed the schools or buildings around Prakarma, were the schools Sampradaik? Okay. Were the schools Sampradaik? So if we're talking about Samprada, the transition Samprada being knowledge attained from the Guru's time and just passed on, then yes, they were Sampradaik. Did the school teach Nihang Maryada teachings? I would imagine that schools that taught Nihang's Maryada teachings were in the Dal. So the Dal is effectively, Dal literally means army. And Nihang's things, they work in Dals. Yeah. So there's different type of Dal, Buddha Dal, Tarana Dal, there's Nanak Dal. There's so many different type of Dals, right? Different type of armies, or maybe a military person would know better in terms of how army is structured. But it's a structure that's military-ish, And to learn the Nihang Singh Maryada and teachings, you would just go into the Dal and stay there for a couple of days, weeks, months, however you want to stay there, and you learn a lot. You learn what time they wake up. You learn how they go to sleep. You learn like all about their Maryada in that way. So I would imagine that was the same thing in that time as well. I don't think that the schools, the Bungay, taught that. But again, there could be maybe a school, because that philosophy of the Nihang Singh carries very martial and very active, like how to clean a horse, how to Shastra Vidya and stuff. So maybe there was a Shastra Vidya Bunga, maybe, but maybe otherwise the Nihang Dals will be the place to learn. Did it teach Namdari traditions? Okay, so Namdari, for anyone that doesn't know, is a Samprada that's not 100% associated with the other Sampradas, if I could put it that way. As in, like, their tradition consists of a living Guru. For that reason, a lot of other Sampradas shy away from the Namdaris. And other people would associate with them for the Kirtan aspect, because a lot of our Kirtan traditions have been preserved by the Namdari community. So the question was, did it teach Namdari traditions? If by Namdari traditions mean the Kirtan, then yes. Did it teach Taksali Maryada, etc.? Yes. So Taksali is just a modern way to refer to the Gyani Samprada, which we didn't really. So the Gyaniya Samprada has different parnalis. Parnali means like different paths, right? So Mani Singh to Guru Baksh Singh was one path. Mani Singh to another Singh is another path. Does that make sense? So Mani Singh had 3 main students. Right? So each student has their own parnali, right? Which leads to different historical documents, leads to historical events, and leads to people nowadays that you see. Yeah. So one of them was a Damdami Arth Pranali, which is often attributed to Baba Deep Singh. So that's who they're referring to as Taksali. So they did teach Taksali Maryada. I would say Taksali Maryada is pretty much, again, Maryada evolves over time because Sampradas evolve over time. That's what differentiate different Sampradas, right? The different Sampradas differentiate from each other because they're like, hey, you know what? I brush my teeth from left to right, you brush your teeth from right to left, but the things we're both brushing our teeth. Right? So Sampradas differentiate that same way. They'll do one thing just a slightly different way, you know. So they did teach Taksali Maryada as we see nowadays. I think it has evolved to what we see nowadays. But the basis of that, yes, meaning clean your hands, right? Is by Mani Singh Shahir of Taksal Samprada. Good question. So again, like it's all kind of related, you know. Bhai Mani Singh Ji's like branch of Pranali, Gurbakh Singh is, and you see if you go to like dandariantaksal.com or something, you'll see like the lineages come up, and you'll see Bhai Mani, not Bhai Mani Singh there, but you see Bhai Gurbakh Singh there. You see Bhai Surat Singh there as well. You see Gyani Sant Singh Gyani there as well. So there you see that everyone kind of says like, yeah, these guys were our group as well, and so. Is by Mani Singh Shahid Taksal Samprada. Taksal literally means taksal. Tak means take. Take means coins. Where coins were minted. Yeah. Where coins were minted and stamped. Yeah. So a taksal literally just means where you're minted and you're stamped. Yeah. So as in like you're stamped with the stamp of like you're educated now, and you're minted as in you go through a set of courses, right? So in that sense, then yes. Are all Sampradas combined into Suraj Prakash? Is Kavi Santokh Singh exploring all Samprada writing Suraj Prakash? By writing Suraj Prakash? Are all Sampradas combined into Suraj Prakash? Suraj Prakash combines the history of the Gurus. Is Kavi Santokh Singh exploring all Sampradas by writing Suraj Prakash? No, not really. He's just looking at the Guru's history. But he does mention 6 from the different Sampradas. Like for example, my Ustadji, right, Kavi Gyani Sher Singh, their teacher is an Udasi, right? And that teacher, his Pranali, his history traces to there's a character that comes in Kavi Santokh Singh's writing who's Baba Ferumal Sachi Dadi. I don't know if you ever heard of Baba Ferumal Ji. Baba Ferumal Ji was a Masand during Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's time. Yeah, Baba Ferumal Ji was a Udasi. He was a Masand. Masand means like, so there was a system called Masands, yeah? And it starts from Guru Amar Das Ji's time with the Bhai Manjiyan. Anyone heard this before? Bhai Manjiyan? Yeah. Okay. So Bhai Manjiyan, 22 Manjis. Manji means seat. Yeah. Gurus have set up 22 seats, right, which were effectively the representation of the Guru when the Guru was not there. Does that make sense? The representation of the Guru when the Guru is not there. So 22 Manjis, because there were 22 states of India at that time. So each Manji was a Pracharik who was effectively a very enlightened being, would go to their state and teach Sikhi there. Yeah. So that Bhai Manji eventually transitioned to the Masand period from Guru Har Rai's time and onwards. So the Masand period eventually became corrupted, and it's a long context behind it. But one Masand was Baba Ferumal Ji Sachi Dadi. And they were very honest Guru Sikh. They were a Brahmgyani. Yeah? So Guru Sahib, when he ordered all the Masands to come, right, Baba Ferumal Ji also came as well, holding their dadi. Because Guru Sahib said, may all the Masands come and I'm going to blacken their faces, right, basically, because they were corrupted. Baba Ferumal Ji came holding their dadi, and he said, Maharaj, I'm here. And Guru Sahib said, no, you are one of my true Sikhs, right? And you have Sachi Dadi, Twadi Dadi Sachi. And his dadi was very long. So there's a portrait of Baba Ferumal Ji, maybe we'll show it next time, which is his beard is like up to the floor. Yeah. So from that Pranali comes the teacher of my Ustad. Yeah. So, and then I learned from my Ustad. So like, I forgot what the question was all about. But in some way or some form, yeah, I forgot what I was going on about. But yeah, so the Suraj Prakash talk about the Sampradas. Yes, it talk about different key characters in the Suraj Prakash, different Gur Sikhs that are related to different Sampradas that are available at that time in Suraj Prakash. But again, Suraj Prakash is the collection of Sakhis from Guru Nanak Dev Ji to Guru Gobind Singh Ji. This might be a controversial topic, but what is our stance on homophobia? I have seen comments, speeches, statements, etc. from very prominent figures in our Panth, for example, Sanchi, who have said things against those who are gay. Is it wrong to be gay in Sikhism? Is it wrong to blank contentment to hold contempt against one who is gay? And should individuals be called out for it? Okay. I think this might be a controversial topic, but what is our stance on homophobia? What is our stance? So as a community as a whole, we don't have a stance. The reason is because when the community makes a stance on something, right, it's a very long process, and it has happened before, but it's taken a long time to gather all the scholars to make that time, and then the scholars agree upon each other, and it's a very hard process. And we've had that process called the Sarbat Khalsa, right? So the Sarbat Khalsa is the gathering of all the Vidwans, the scholars, at Akal Takht usually, and there a decision is made on a topic that's on a hand, right? So for example, topics on gay, homophobia, using your for with Gurbani, I don't know, all these kind of modern topics that we have nowadays, we as a generation know about, but our parents' generation might not have known about, their parents' generation might have not known about. There's no political community stance, right? What I would suggest is to look at any issue or any topic that has not been approached yet by our community through the lens of the philosophy carried by Gurbani, right? So what is the philosophy of Gurbani? It lies on these qualities like compassion, contentment, love, forgiveness, these type of things, right? And in reality, Gurbani is what is Gurbani doing? It's trying to invoke humanity, right? When Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj says, Manasiki Jad Sabha Eka Pehchanabo, we recognize all as the race of humans, right? The human race. What are they inspiring within us? They're inspiring compassion from one another. That no matter what you have as a physical label, on a spiritual level, we're all connected. Yeah? On a human level, we're all connected, right? So whether it's a topic of homophobia or is a topic of any topic that we see in our generation that parents might have not seen, we have to look at it through the eyes of compassion, right? So it's a very personal stance. It'll be very personal of how you deal with this topic. I, for one, cannot speak for the community, but I can give you my personal view is that my personal self is I try not to judge. Whoever comes in front of me, with whatever issue they come in front of me, I take my intellect away and I'd be like, I don't exist as a Supreet Singh. Right now, I exist as a brother, and that person in front of me is a sister or a brother, and I try to see the conversation that's happening from a third person point of view as someone who has no intent of affecting the other person's life, right? Just looking at what the conversation is being given as what it is being given, right? So that will be my advice as well, to treat everyone with love, right? If Sikhs are only supposed to have one spouse, why do some scholars state that some of our gurus had multiple wives at the same time? Is this true? Yes. Guru Har Gobind Ji Maharaj, Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, these were the main gurus that had more than one wife. Guru Har Gobind Ji, Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji, right? And there's different reasons, obviously it's not like the gurus are above any idea of sexual interest, right? It's not geared towards that. Different scholars have different reasons. One could be because the time now is becoming more political. From Guru Nanak Dev to Guru Arjan Dev Ji, it was less of a political vibe of the gurus than it is when Guru Har Gobind Ji sets up the Akal Takht, right? Takht means throne, right? And it is very common for kings to have more than one wife. But I think personally that if you look at the Sakhis of each gurus and them getting married, for example, Guru Har Gobind Ji, when Guru Har Gobind Ji their marriage was being announced, right, two Sikhs got up at the same time, according to Suraj Prakash. Two Sikhs got up at the same time, be like, I want to give my daughter to you, right? So that's like one. Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji's time, one king had many daughters, and he's like, I don't want my Raj to be split up into different areas. I want to give it to one place. Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji, I trust you, and boom, Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji got married to many people at once. And this is similar thing goes with Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. So the Sakhiyan kind of give light to why the Gurus had multiple wives. But if you have more questions, or if I didn't really answer the question properly, it's just because it's a very long question. But obviously you just need to have Shraddha in the Guru. That's number one, right? Number two is that you need to see history from the light it's being written in. As in the context of history is affected by the environment that's around it. Does Taksali actually come from Baba Deep Singh Ji and Bhai Mani Singh Ji? Does Taksal actually come from Baba Deep Singh Ji and Bhai Mani Singh Ji? Yes. Again, Taksal is just a name for a school. Yeah. So there's Damdami Taksal, but there's other Taksals as well. Please explain Girvari Sampradai, i.e. Pandit Gulab Singh. So Pandit Gulab Singh Ji was a really important scholar. One of his texts called the Pavaras Amrit is taught in the Gyaniya Sampradaya. So when someone learns Guru Granth Sahib Ji Santhya, then they kind of go on a course, you can say, where you go through different texts written in Braj to gain understanding of the language. One of them is Sarkatavali, Janakya Rajniti, Pavaras Amrit, different texts exploring different things. Pandit Gulab Singh wrote Pavaras Amrit, and he is seen to be in Nirmala in thought and in tradition, but he's also related to the Girvari Sampada, which I have something special, if you guys call me again, about. Might be wrong in this assumption. Last one, guys. Might be wrong in this assumption, but I have seen many Gurbani transliterations, and in general discussions where it is said you could be a murderer or the worst person in the world, but if you earnestly take Vaheguruji's name even once, you will be saved. Is this accurate? If it is, what is the point in Naam Kamai and doing more to fulfill our journey of life? Okay, so being a good person and a bad person, right? It's very subjective, right? It's subjective because we define what is good and we define what is bad, right? So someone could be whatever they are, right? A murderer, whatever you want to deem as the worst. At the end of the day, they're still a person, right? You could have maybe been in the situation they're at right now, and you might have thought like, hey man, like someone take pity on me, right? The idea is that Vaheguruji is Nirpo Nirvair, right? This is in the Mool Mantra. Nirpo means without fear, Nirvair, Nir means without, Vair means Vair karna, to hate, without hate. That means the chemistry of that divine is without hatred. That means it only has one thing, which is love, right? The divine has only one thing, which is love. That's all it has, right? It doesn't have hatred. It doesn't have animosity. It doesn't judge. It doesn't see two. We see two. We see good and bad. The Creator doesn't see good or bad. They see one. Does that make sense? So when the Guru says, that in one area someone is, worshipping you in this way, right? In another area someone is worshipping you in this way, but you are that person who exists in, and I think I said this back in the Interfaith event, Dehra Masjid Soi Puja O Nivaj Oi, that you are in the Dehra, which means the Mandir, and you are in the Masjid as well. Masjid means masjid, where Muslims go, right? Dehra Masjid Oi Puja or Nivaj Oi, and in the Puja you're there, and the Namaz which Muslims do, you're there as well. Manukh ki jaat, within all humanity, anek ko parmao hai, you have given this illusion that you're many, but you are actually all one, right? So between the sinner and the saint, it is the same light of the Creator, right? We cannot see that light because we only on a superficial level understand that concept, or are learning to understand that concept, but a enlightened being will see that, right? So for enlightened beings, all people are one, whether they're a sinner or a saint, whether they're a monna or a kesatari, or it doesn't matter to an enlightened being. They will see the light within you, right? In the same way the Creator does the same, right? So Naam Japana is an act of connecting to the divine. So when we connect to the divine, we're connected to that source of ultimate love. So there can be no judgment for that person, right? Yes, in this world, maybe they'll have a judgment of courts, and maybe if you committed a crime, then you're going to have to be judged for that, right? But again, on that personal level, your relationship to the Guru has no judgment. Your relationship to the Guru is only based off on love. So I hope that helps. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And if you guys want, I can show you that book that I mentioned earlier, either here or personally, but this is the end of the talk. Thank you so much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.